Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you once again. As a matter of fact, I look forward to this event. It's always, a really pleasant place to be, and it's a very, very nice experience for me, and it seems to be for all of us who are here. So again, I very much appreciate being with you, and I very much appreciate listening to those last two speeches which were being made. I thought that they were both made very, very well. These are serious people who are sincere and honest and capable of doing the best kind of job that needs to be done on behalf of the people that they represent. And that's really what our government is supposed to do. Our government is supposed to focus its attention on people and the people's needs, and not on anything else. The needs of the people, that's the basic rationale for government, particularly this democratic Republican government. And we need to make sure that that continues to happen. We're facing a lot of serious problems right now nationally, as I think you know. And a lot of those problems have to do with the irresponsibility of the people in the White House, in Washington, and the corrupt ways in which they have operated and badly mismanaged this government. I was in Binghamton and Ithaca earlier today and had a couple of press conferences, one in each place, and talked about a number of things. One of the things I talked about briefly was an issue that's very important, and that has to do with Medicare and the way in which this administration is attempting to corrupt and eventually eliminate the entire Medicare program. You may remember how they put that prescription drug program into Medicare and then as a result of that, jacked up the price of Medicare, making it much more expensive and making it more difficult to sustain. Recently, we had a big fight with them in Washington when they tried to cut back the Medicare reimbursement for hospitals and physicians, which would in effect have drawn physicians and hospitals away from Medicare, and by doing so would have deprived many elderly people of the health care that they need, which is so critically important for them in their lives. Today we dealt with another issue because this administration once again is attempting to knock down Medicare by taking Medicare away from hospice. We know what hospices are. Hospices are very important. They're very important for a number of reasons, the most important of which is the last period of time in a lot of people's lives, to make sure that they get the appropriate care and attention. This administration is seeking to eliminate the Medicare funding for hospices. That would affect the hospice in Binghamton, it would affect the hospice in Ithaca, and hospices all around the country. And it would thereby deprive the people who need health care the most, elderly people, deprive them of the health care that they need. And one of the reasons they're attempting to eliminate the funding for hospices is because hospices save money. They reduce the cost of health care. They're so effective and efficient. And that runs contrary to the interests of this president and the people around him. They don't want a health care program that's going to reduce health care costs, particularly Medicare costs. They want a health care program that's going to increase Medicare costs so that they can make the argument that we can't afford Medicare any longer. That's been their principal objective. And we've seen that time and time again. We've also seen how they attempted to privatize Social Security. These are just two small examples of the way in which these kinds of people, these kinds of Republicans, these kinds of people who have taken the Republican Party and moved it closer and closer to fascism rather than republicanism, changing the whole aspect of that form of government. It's not like Abraham Lincoln anymore. It's not like Nelson Rockefeller anymore. It's totally different, totally right-wing, totally opposed to the vast majority of the American people. That's what's happening. And those are the kind of candidates that they're putting up for office. We had a discussion today talking about the problems with energy costs, how the price of gasoline has gone up so hugely, more than 4 times since this administration has taken office, and how the price of home heating oil this winter is up over $4 a gallon, and the impact that that's going to have on working people all across our country, but especially here in the northeastern part of the United States, as well as other places that get a little snow and cold in the winter. One of the things they're talking about is the need to drill off the coast, out on the outer continental shelf. But when they say that, and they say along with it, that that's the reason why oil prices have gone up, because they can't drill in the outer continental shelf, they won't tell you the whole story. They won't say the real truth, because they want attention focused away from the real aspects of the truth. Among those aspects of the truth is the fact that the oil companies, the international oil companies, already control leases and have access to 80% of the energy, oil and natural gas, on public lands. In other words, oil and natural gas that is owned by the American people because it's on public lands, administered by the government. And this particular government has granted more leases to drill on those lands than any other administration in the history of America. And in spite of the fact that they have all of those leases, more than 7,000 leases, they still are saying that they want to take the last 20% of oil that is owned by the American people, even though they haven't begun to touch the 68 million acres down here in the lower 48 states, half of it on land and half of it offshore, including in the Gulf of Mexico and off the coasts. They haven't begun to touch those 68 acres of land. Haven't begun to touch them. And if they did, we'd have the price of oil going down. So what we've said to them is, either use it or lose it. Start using this property, start using this commodity, or we need to take it away from you. But the administration, of course, is blocking that, and the Republicans are blocking that. When you have two oil men in the White House, you can expect to have the kind of difficult problems that we've had as a result of Bush and Cheney. But we're fighting back on them. We're fighting back. We're going to get the use of our commodities. We're going to get the use of our products. We're saying to the President that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve now is 97% full. It's almost completely full, more than 97%. Let's lease some of that out onto the market. That'll drop down the price of gasoline and do it rapidly. And it's been done before. Even this president's father, George H.W. Bush, who, when the price of gasoline went up in his administration, he released oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and the price of gasoline dropped by 33%. But this president doesn't want to do it because, again, he's much too closely aligned with the oil companies. He's getting much too much of the record profits that they are taking and putting it into his own pocket. What are those record profits? Last year, the record profits of the oil companies were $123 billion last year. That was record. The record profits for any corporation in the history of America. This year, they're up near $140 billion. Actually, the estimate is $144 billion. They keep going up and up. More and more money keeps going into their pockets. ExxonMobil in 1 quarter took in $40 billion. They spent $32 billion of the $40 billion in profits to buy back their stocks. Buy back their stocks and therefore put the money in their own pockets. That's the situation that we're dealing with. We need to have a president and a Congress that is not subservient to the biggest international corporations that we have to deal with, who are putting out some of the most important products on the market, energy. We need a president and a government who pay attention to the needs of the American people and deal with those needs constructively and appropriately, and make sure that all of us have the kind of life that we have the right to lead and live as citizens of the United States of America. That's what we need to have. And we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to get a good president elected this coming year, this November. To get a good president elected and do everything we can to have a strong Congress elected. Members of the Congress who are willing to stand up for the rights of the American people. And if necessary, stand up to the president and anyone else that needs to be